LSU has made, reportedly, a couple of additions to its coaching staff, one yesterday evening and one being reported today. I think the one today probably a little bit more impactful, being that it's a full-time job, so we'll start right there with the report from Matt Zenitz of 24/7 Sports and CBS, as well as Wilson Alexander over at The Advocate, reporting that LSU will tab Alex Atkins as its next tight ends coach. Now, we figured that tight end was going to be covered at some point. Didn't think a full-time special teams coach was going to be on the docket, and that's being confirmed here with this report that Alex Atkins will join the LSU staff. Many of you may be familiar with Alex Atkins. Many of you may have no idea who that is. Alex Atkins was the offensive coordinator at Florida State over the last 3 seasons. He was a college offensive lineman. He played at Tennessee Martin and has ascended the coaching ranks since his playing days. Immediately when he came off the field as a player, he became a coach at his alma mater. He was a GA, then he coached some tight ends, moved on to Marshall where he was a GA, did some community college work, worked his way up through Chattanooga, Georgia Southern, coaching the offensive line, and then got an opportunity to go coach with Willie Fritz and Tulane in 2016. He was the assistant head coach and offensive line coach at Tulane from 2016 to 2018. From there, he moved on to Charlotte, where he became the offensive coordinator at Charlotte. And then he, after 1 season with the 49ers, went to Florida State to coach the offensive line under Mike Norvell. After 2 seasons on the offensive line with Mike Norvell at Florida State, he became the offensive coordinator and offensive line coach. Now, it's very important that we talk about the fact that Mike Norvell calls the plays at Florida State. So Alex Atkins was the offensive coordinator. He was not the play caller. Those duties went to Mike Norvell. But Alex Atkins was trusted enough on that staff to be named offensive coordinator. Now, we know in his first year, as Jordan Travis was the quarterback, LSU went to Orlando and played. Well, no, that was 2 years before that. So his first year, that was against New Orleans against LSU, and that was a good Florida State team, had a solid season. And then the following season with Atkins as the offensive coordinator, Florida State led the ACC in scoring. It was Jordan Travis and Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson and all those guys. They, again, led the ACC in scoring, were unbeaten in the regular season, and then were left out of the college football playoff. This past season, it was a disaster in Tallahassee, and a lot of people had to pay the price for that with their jobs, and Alex Atkins was one of those as part of wholesale staff changes, which you know are coming when you go 2-10. Alex Atkins was let go as the offensive coordinator and offensive line coach at Florida State. Atkins is thought of as a very, very high-level recruiter. He, of course, was one of the main recruiters on a guy who flipped to LSU from Florida State. If you'll recall, very, very late in the recruiting process, LSU got a big commitment from a 5-star offensive lineman that had previously been committed to Florida State. That, of course, Solomon Thomas. Alex Atkins was the primary recruiter for Solomon Thomas. He got fired. Solomon Thomas said, wait a second, I got to see where things shake out. And he signs at LSU. And then I think probably coincidentally, 2 months later, you've got your answer, and Alex Atkins rejoins him at LSU. So he's going to coach the tight ends. It's something he did very early in his career. It's not not a position that he played, but you are adding a really good recruiter and a guy that a quality program over there at Florida State thought enough of to bring him in as their offensive coordinator. So I think this is a very, very high-level ad for LSU. I think it's a pretty big splash hire, I should say. And it's interesting that Alex Atkins and Slade Nagel worked together at Tulane for 3 years. Slade Nagel was the tight ends coach. He moves on to Houston to be the offensive coordinator, and you replace him with a guy that he's got some familiarity with. So Atkins has recruited the state of Louisiana at Tulane. He's respected in college football circles, and he's a guy that LSU has targeted. And there's nothing official from LSU yet, but it sounds like things are moving in that direction as early as today, that LSU will add Alex Atkins as its tight ends coach. Another ad that was made yesterday in the evening was an analyst on the defensive side of the football, and that's Lance Guidry. Now, that name is probably familiar to a lot of you who are listening. Lance Guidry is a Louisiana native. He is from Welsh, Louisiana. He's 53 years old. He played football in the early 90s at McNeese State as a defensive back. He immediately, when he finished his playing career at McNeese, started up his coaching career as a GA at McNeese. He worked at various high schools in Louisiana, Leesville, Carencro, went back to McNeese and worked there from 2000 to 2003, back to Carencro, back to McNeese. Spent a lot of time in Southwest Louisiana coaching from the time of 1994 through 2008. Then Miami of Ohio gave him a shot to be their defensive backs coach. He became their interim head coach in 2010, was a defensive coordinator at Western Kentucky, interim head coach at Western Kentucky, went back to McNeese, eventually became the head coach at McNeese from 2016 to 2018. He's been a defensive coordinator at Southeastern and has recently been the defensive coordinator at Marshall and Miami since 2001. The big name there, obviously, is Miami. You've got a lot of Western Kentucky, McNeese, Carencro High School, Leesville High School, Southeastern Louisiana, Florida Atlantic, Miami. That was his big opportunity. And, 2 years ago, Miami had pretty good defense. It was a pretty solid team, and they had a quality defense. Last year, the defense was not good at all. It was not. Miami was winning games because Cam Ward was pulling rabbits out of his hat, and Lance Guidry was the defensive coordinator. He was let go in the midst of that really, really big drop-off. Now, you're not hiring Lance Guidry to come in here and be your defensive coordinator. That role is filled. You're not hiring Lance Guidry to come in and be your safeties coach. That role's filled. You're hiring Lance Guidry to come in here and be an analyst, be another set of eyeballs. And I think when you've got coaching experience that date back 30 years, you have spent from 94 through 2008, that's 14 years in Southwest Louisiana. Then you came back and you were at McNeese from 13 to 18. He spent a ton of time in this state. Now, this is not a guy that's going to be out on the road recruiting for you, but he's a relationship guy in that state, knows a lot of high school coaches, knows the state inside and out, and has been respected enough to get an opportunity to be a defensive coordinator in the ACC. So I think as analyst hires go, this is a positive. Do I think it's a huge impact on LSU's football program? I do not. Do I think it's a disaster that you hired the Miami defensive coordinator that was awful this past season in terms of points allowed? No, I don't. I think this is a nice fit for LSU to get another set of eyes into the program. It's very similar to kind of the career that Bob Diaco has had. Diaco ascended a little bit higher. He was defensive coordinator at Notre Dame and then went on to be the head coach at UConn, and you brought him into the building. And you've done that with some different guys. Nick Saban made a habit of taking guys who were a little bit down in their luck and bringing them in as an analyst and kind of rehabilitating their reputation. I think Butch Jones is one of those guys who was the head coach of Tennessee, got fired, came down, was an analyst for a year, boom, pops back up at Arkansas State, that kind of thing. So no, not a big news story. I think a bigger name than a news story in this part of the world. But two guys that will come into LSU, Alex Atkins as the tight end coach, and then Lance Guidry as a defensive analyst. And you're starting to see the staff really take shape here at LSU. There is not a lot to be filled in. You have an unlimited amount of analysts, so if somebody comes open from an NFL roster or squad, or a new coach comes in, he kind of cleans house somewhere, and you want to pull somebody in to come watch tape and help you out with a different set of eyes, you can certainly do that. But LSU will have its position coaches filled. Their special teams role has been filled, and you start to kind of bring in some analysts as well, and then you start to get ready for spring football, which will probably be here a little more quickly than you realize. You're almost a month and a half away from getting things rolling over there on the Ponderosa for some spring football, and certainly Lance Guidry and Alex Atkins look to be involved in all of that. So, hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.